Café Perry. The sun filtered through the large windows of Café Perry, casting a warm glow on the wooden tables. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the soft chatter of patrons enjoying their morning routines. At a corner table, Emma sat with her sketchbook, lost in her thoughts as she sketched the lively scene around her. Across the café, Jake entered, shaking off the chill of the morning air. He spotted Emma and felt a familiar flutter in his chest. He had admired her talent from afar, often stealing glances at her artwork. Today, he decided, would be the day he finally spoke to her. As he approached, Emma looked up, her eyes brightening with recognition. "Hey, Jake. How's it going?" she greeted, her voice warm and inviting. "Pretty good. Just came in for my usual," he replied, gesturing to the counter. "What about you? Working on something new?" Emma nodded, her cheeks flushing slightly. "Yeah, just trying to capture the vibe of the cafe. It's always so inspiring here." Jake leaned closer, intrigued. "Mind if I take a look?" With a shy smile, she turned the sketchbook toward him. "It's not finished yet, but I'm trying to get the details just right." He admired her work, noting the way she captured the essence of the cafe and its patrons. "You have a real gift, Emma. I love how you bring everything to life." Her heart raced at his compliment, and she felt a sense of pride swell within her. "Thanks, that means a lot coming from you." As they continued to chat, the conversation flowed effortlessly, each moment deepening their connection. Laughter filled the space between them, and for the first time, Emma felt a spark of something more than friendship. Outside, the world continued to bustle, but within the walls of Café Perry, time seemed to stand still as they shared stories and dreams. It was a beginning, one that neither of them had anticipated but both secretly hoped for. Chapter 1, His Name. Every day, a particular customer arrives at exactly the same time. At 10:10 a.m., 10 minutes after Café Perry opens, the door chimes, announcing the arrival of their first customer, who is always the same man. "Welcome." Midoriya Izuku greets him with a smile. The man has the most unusual hairstyle Midoriya has ever seen, a bicolored bowl cut, white on one side and a bright shade of crimson on the other. A scar runs along the left side of his face, which Midoriya initially thought was part of a cosplay costume, but it looks too real to be fake. Living in Tokyo for almost 3 years now, Midoriya is still surprised by the flashy Harajuku fashion, but he reminds himself that he shouldn't judge others' hairstyles, especially since he was often teased for his naturally messy green hair back in elementary school. The bi-haired man nods and takes his usual seat in the cafe. Midoriya chuckles to himself, thinking, nonchalant as always. Once settled, the man pulls out his silver laptop and places it on the smooth round table. He begins typing furiously, the sound of his fingers hitting the keys echoing from the cafe's kitchen. After about 15 minutes, he slumps against the sofa with an irritated expression. This is Midoriya's cue to take his order, as it's the only chance he has to approach him without risking a scowl. "Sir, would you like to order?" Midoriya asks, knowing he doesn't need to offer a menu since he already knows the man's order. "1 black espresso and 1 caramel frappuccino," the man replies. Midoriya grins and bows, heading toward the kitchen. "Ida-san," he calls through the small divider, handing the order to the barista. "The usual?" Ida raises an eyebrow. Ida Tenya embodies the stereotypical, prim and proper rich boy. He is a bit uptight and sometimes struggles to read the room, with his neatly trimmed midnight blue hair and signature glasses. When Midoriya and Ida first met in college, they never expected to become friends. However, during difficult times, Ida was one of the few who supported him and even suggested Midoriya work at Café Perry for a change of pace. Midoriya nods. "The usual." "Oh, it seems our customer has finished his chocolate streak," Uraraka, another waiter, says as she leans over the kitchen divider, nearly causing a commotion. Midoriya feels heat rush to his face at her sudden closeness. Uraraka Ochako, or Ochako as she prefers, is one of Midoriya's first friends at Café Perry. With her brown bob cut and cheerful demeanor, she radiates positivity. She helped Midoriya adapt to his new job, and while he once had a crush on her, he now considers her one of his closest friends, along with Ida. This is actually his third caramel order, Ida notes. At this rate, he'll try every frappe flavor we have. The customer has a habit of going on flavor streaks, ordering the same item multiple times before switching to something new. If he dislikes a flavor, he skips it entirely. So far, he has given up on 3 flavors, Black Forest, Cinnamon, and Red Velvet. However, his espresso order remains unchanged, even though he never drinks it, he simply lets it cool while he enjoys the frappuccino. Midoriya has given up trying to understand this mysterious customer. He wonders when he started noticing all the quirky details about him. Midoriya, Shouto, the resident patisserie, calls from the kitchen, motioning for him to come over. Midoriya approaches, knowing Shouto rarely speaks to him unless it's important. Hey, listen. Mr. Half and Half. Please don't call him that, Midoriya frowns. Shouto laughs, clearly amused by Midoriya's protective tone. I don't know his name, and neither does anyone else, including you. Would you prefer I call him Midoriya's favorite customer? Midoriya flushes. Mao, Shouto-san. Just give him the respect he deserves, he's our most loyal customer. Yes, Shouto waves his hand dismissively. Anyway, I created a new cake recipe, and if you don't mind, could you offer it to him and ask for his opinion? Café Perry has a tradition of offering test recipes to random customers for feedback. Most customers provide simple responses, but Shouto seeks detailed critiques. The first time they offered the mysterious customer something, he took a small bite with a poker face and left without a word. The next day, he returned with a thorough 5-page review, impressing everyone with his detailed feedback. His report included a detailed description of the cake, covering its aesthetics, texture, taste, and the ingredients he assumed it contained. He also noted his likes and dislikes about the cake and suggested restaurants that offered similar flavors, which could help create a better version at Café Perry. Clearly, Shouto was thrilled to receive such a thorough review. Since then, Mr. Customer had become his go-to tester for his creations. Midoriya peeked outside the kitchen door, noticing the increasing number of customers. Don't you think he looks too busy and annoyed today to use him as your test subject? He asked Shouto. Also, I have to get back to work. When he turned around, Shouto's pleading eyes met his. The intimidating gaze that often led others to mistake him for a yakuza was now shining brightly, warning Midoriya of impending tears. Shouto's thick lips were pouting, and while it might have looked endearing on someone else, it felt more disturbing than pitiful to Midoriya. Accepting defeat, he extended his hand, and Shouto grinned as he handed him a small plate with a delicate chocolate cake decorated with white chocolate shavings. It felt like he had stepped into a different genre altogether. Midoriya exited the kitchen and approached the customer's table. Sir, he said. The customer looked up from his laptop, his eyes widening at the sight of the cute little cake Midoriya was holding. If it weren't for Midoriya's keen observation skills, he might have missed the small glint in the customer's heterochromatic eyes, which almost seemed like a sparkle. The customer nodded. Midoriya felt a bead of sweat form. I'm sorry for bothering you about this, sir. Todoroki, the customer interrupted. Yes, thank you. Wait, what? Todoroki, he repeated. My name. Oh. Midoriya replied, surprised. He could talk. I heard you call me the customer and Mr. Half and Half, Todoroki continued. I would prefer if you used my name instead of those monikers that make me sound like a villain. I don't think Todoroki sounds like a villain's name, Midoriya replied. Todoroki gave him a deadpan look. I meant the customer. There was a long pause. Oh, Midoriya said again, struggling to find a coherent response. Another pause followed. So. Todoroki coughed awkwardly. Midoriya. Todoroki-kun, oh no, I meant Todoroki sa, wait, you know my name. That's a lot of pauses. Todoroki's lips formed a slight curve, and Midoriya couldn't tell if it was a smile. You can drop the formalities. You have a name tag. Midoriya's mouth formed a small O. No time for chit-chat, Midoriya-kun, a stern voice called from across the room, likely Ida's. A little help would be appreciated. Uraraka chimed in, balancing a couple of plates and teacups as she moved between tables. I'm coming. Midoriya turned to Todoroki with an apologetic look. I'm sorry, sir. Just call me when you need me, okay? Todoroki turned away, his cheeks slightly flushed. He nodded and returned to his laptop. Midoriya tilted his head, wondering about the change in Todoroki's demeanor but decided to think about it later. He only realized his choice of words when he arrived at his apartment later that day. Surprisingly, Todoroki-kun was easily flustered. Maybe he wasn't so stoic after all. Stone-cold eyes stared back at him, filled with fear for his life. Any signs of weakness would only provoke the sadistic side of his assailant. Yet, he couldn't stop his legs from shaking. His instincts screamed for him to run, but he couldn't. Those eyes dared him to take a step, and he knew that if he did, the monster would pounce. Every joint in his body felt weak. He wouldn't be surprised if he fell to his knees as the tremors took over. The abandoned building was eerily silent, isolated for the operation. Suddenly, loud thuds echoed in his ears. What was that? Ah, it was the thumping of his heart, desperately beating as if it knew this might be its last moment. Show yourself, you fiend, the young detective shouted, trying to maintain his defiance despite the hopelessness of the situation. Slowly, a looming figure emerged from the shadows, a grin spreading across its face. Todoroki Shouto slammed his fist against the rough wooden table, exhaling in frustration. Unbeknownst to him, other patrons in the cafe were giving him curious looks. The cold never bothered him, their stares meant nothing. He angrily grabbed his frappuccino and took a large gulp, grimacing at the brain freeze. Returning to his laptop, he hoped the cold would inspire him to create a thrilling scenario as his main character finally cornered the antagonist. Or was it the other way around? That was for the readers to find out. Todoroki stared at the screen for a minute before admitting he was facing a serious case of writer's block. He leaned on the smooth circular table, resting his hand on his tired face as he gazed out the cafe window, watching the passers-by. Numerous stereotypes filled the streets of Shibuya that day. Couples held hands, students celebrated their freedom from class, salarymen juggled briefcases and cans of beer, and part-timers handed out flyers. Just another busy day in Shibuya. Todoroki inhaled deeply, closing his eyes as he imagined being part of the hustle and bustle, the chatter, laughter, and sounds of heels on pavement. But once he exhaled, he was brought back to the reality of the cafe, where the music played softly in the background. Ah, Café Perry. His go-to place whenever he was at his wit's end and needed a safe place to hide from his editor, Aizawa-san, who was probably waiting impatiently in front of his apartment, ready to discuss the upcoming deadline for his novel. Sir, a voice said politely. Would you like a pitcher of water? Todoroki blinked. This was rare. He was a regular in this place, and the staff already knew about his rule. He would order if he wanted something, and if he didn't, they shouldn't approach him, as any slight disturbance could easily destroy his concentration. His facial muscles tensed, slight irritation visible on his face. He scowled at the person in front of him, only to be greeted by a pair of uniquely colored green eyes. It was Midoriya. The first time Todoroki saw Midoriya, he was greeting him at the cafe's entrance, and it felt as if cherry blossoms bloomed around them, a whirlwind of petals softly brushing against his face. Midoriya was a few inches shorter than him, though they might possibly be the same age. He had the messiest hair Todoroki had ever seen, looking like he had permanent bedhead that no comb could tame. Even weirder, his hair was a forest green that made Todoroki wonder if he dyed it that shade. If so, why green of all colors? But who was he to judge? Todoroki often faced comments about his own two-toned hair. Midoriya's smile was bright and eye-catching, and whenever Todoroki saw it, he couldn't help but smile back. His face was dotted with freckles, which only enhanced his innocent appeal. Despite his fragile appearance, his hands were calloused and strong. Not many would notice, but he was actually quite muscular for his stature. Todoroki noticed, and that was why he thought Midoriya was so perfect. "Oh, I am sorry, sir," Midoriya mumbled, looking like a child. It was the first time he had seen Todoroki's intense scowl. "I've noticed that you've been looking a bit troubled for quite some time and now. I thought a glass of cool water would help calm your nerves. I'm sorry for interrupting you." "Water," Todoroki agreed quietly. "I would like that." The messy-haired waiter beamed at him, and Todoroki was slightly taken aback that such an expression was directed towards him. "Sorry about that." Todoroki looked away, uncharacteristically scratching the side of his face in regret. He wasn't the type to apologize, but he knew when to take responsibility for scaring people with his actions. Midoriya shook his head and chuckled. "Oh no, it's all right, sir. It's my fault for startling you like that in the first place." That smile again. "Also, call me Todoroki," he said, pausing as if he were uttering something significant. "Midoriya." Midoriya perked up, as if he had forgotten about their last encounter. "Todoroki-kun," he said earnestly, and Todoroki felt his insides melt. The waiter bowed and rushed back to the kitchen to get his water. Todoroki's eyes returned to his laptop, letting go of the breath he hadn't even realized he was holding. He continued staring blankly at the screen until he heard something thump loudly on his table. How quick and clumsy of Midoriya, he thought, slowly raising his head, only to see dark, gloomy eyes instead of the hopeful greens he had just been admiring. "Yo!" Izuku Shouto greeted in a bored voice. Todoroki blinked. Twice. He turned back to his laptop and typed. "I said, yo, you brat." Izuku menaced, grabbing Todoroki's head, threatening to crush it with his tightening grip. "Is this how you treat your poor editor, who you've been avoiding for the last 2 weeks since you failed to pass your draft on the agreed date?" Todoroki gulped nervously. "Yo." A nerve or two popped on Izuku's temple. His grip tightened, and Todoroki swore he could feel the pressure. "You should be glad you're a prized rookie novelist and that our president would literally kill me before I could harm a single hair on your head, kid." "You're already hurting me," Todoroki mused, but he knew that saying anything could only worsen the situation. Izuku let go of Todoroki's head and slid his heavy hand onto the boy's shoulder. "You know, the age of adulthood in Japan is 20, not so while I'm still your legal guardian. Please don't go running around and disappearing for months on end. I made a promise to your mother, but it's hard to keep if you're not cooperating with me." Todoroki became rigid after hearing the word mother. He stared at his clenched fist, frowning deeply. "I apologize." Izuku smiled. "You really are just a brat." Izuku Shouto, Todoroki's editor, legal guardian, and a longtime family friend, was a man in his late 30s, with untidy hair and unkempt facial hair. His outfit consisted of a white scarf and an all-black ensemble. Todoroki's current style was inspired by his uncle, since he had literally grown up with this man and adapted much from him. "So is there any progress?" Izuku asked, sitting down on the empty chair across from Todoroki. The bay-haired man hesitated but ultimately passed his laptop to his mentor editor. Izuku took it without a word and began to read. "Some rough patches here and there," he said, scratching his bloodshot eyes as he returned the device. "But you made progress, at least." Todoroki's heterochromatic eyes brightened, a sign of joy for anyone else. Years of writing under Izuku's guidance made it easier to discern whether he was displeased or satisfied, and his reaction clearly showed the latter. Then something hit him. "How did you find this place?" Izuku blinked, as if he should already know the answer. "I know you more than you know yourself, kid." There was a prgnn pause. You stalker, Todoroki teased. Aizawa scoffed. Oh please, as if I have the energy to follow you around. And realistically, if I were to become a stalker, I'd choose someone with a life worth stalking. Todoroki clutched his chest in faux pain. Todoroki-kun, oh, Midoriya bowed at the new arrival, and Todoroki's eyes widened in terror as he remembered the waiter's presence and how he and Aizawa should never meet. But it was too late, they had already arrived. Here's the menu, sir. Please call for me if you're ready to order, the waiter said. Todoroki noticed the look Aizawa was giving the waiter, his eyes narrowing as he glanced at the name tag. Midoriya, is it? Aizawa pointed, and Midoriya nodded. So, Midoriya, what's the best seller here? Do you have any recommendations for a first-timer like me? Midoriya's face lit up at the opportunity to share his favorites, detailing the best dishes and drink pairings. Aizawa listened intently, which surprised Todoroki, as Aizawa usually got bored easily. However, Todoroki knew Aizawa's interest was more about teasing Midoriya than genuine curiosity, and he felt a pang of sympathy for the waiter. Has anyone told you? Aizawa leaned on the table, resting his chin on his hand, you look like Detective Green. Todoroki nearly choked on his drink. Midoriya blinked in surprise. Detective Green from the Midnight Detective series by Endeavor Sensei? Aizawa nodded. Well, my friends say that whenever they read the book, they picture me as the main character because we're so alike. He laughed shyly, a blush creeping onto his cheeks. I'm not sure if I should be embarrassed or flattered, especially since I'm a big fan of the series. Todoroki couldn't help but smile at this revelation, though he tried to hide it. It's like you were the inspiration for the character, Aizawa remarked. Midoriya waved his arms in embarrassment. That's a stretch, but I do relate to the character a lot, even if he seems different from me. That's interesting. Anyway, my order is. Aizawa redirected the conversation back to the menu, much to Todoroki's relief. After Midoriya took their orders, he left the table. Aizawa turned his intense gaze on Todoroki, making him feel small. But instead of cowering, Todoroki scowled. So you come to this cafe every day to observe this waiter and now use him as inspiration for your character? Aizawa teased. Todoroki felt a wave of embarrassment wash over him. You don't understand, he exclaimed, though it came out more like a frustrated mumble. The first time I saw him, it was like I found my muse. I've never met anyone so perfect for my story, and even when I try to create a character different from him, I end up writing him again. Realizing he was speaking more than usual, he turned his gaze away, his face matching the color of his hair. You even named him after Midoriya. Green. Seriously? You are quite the character, Aizawa shook his head in mock disapproval. You should be glad he's oblivious. If it were anyone else, you could be in serious trouble. I'm still 18, Todoroki protested. There's still juvie, kid, Aizawa pointed out. But I get it. The last time I felt that way was about your mother, many years ago. Whenever I forget why you dislike my father as much as I do, you remind me, Todoroki replied. Your mother rejected me long before your father came into the picture, Aizawa sighed, as if lost in a memory. Don't get the wrong idea. Before Todoroki could ask for clarification, Aizawa raised his hand to catch the attention of one of the waitresses. Hey, can you tell Midoriya I'll be taking my order to go? Todoroki's eyes widened. You're leaving? Oh no, I just wanted to contribute to plastic waste on Earth. Of course, I'm leaving, Aizawa replied sarcastically. Todoroki wanted to ask why, but he already knew the answer. Aizawa, like him, preferred to avoid crowds. He wouldn't be caught out in public unless it was truly necessary. Soon, Aizawa's takeout order arrived. As Uraraka handed him the bill, Aizawa reached for his pocket, but Todoroki stopped him. He took out his wallet and handed a few bills to the waiter. Neither of them exchanged thanks or offers to pay. Instead, Aizawa awkwardly patted Todoroki on the head, which he quickly swatted away in annoyance. They treated each other like family. Aizawa accepted his food and stood up, nodding at Todoroki, who returned the gesture. As Aizawa turned to leave, Todoroki called out, "I'll send you the manuscript before the day ends." Aizawa didn't look back, simply waving his hand dismissively. It felt as if he didn't care about the draft at all. Maybe he just said that to justify visiting. Todoroki thought to himself, "I think sensei is what you call a tsundere." And resumed his work on his writing software. Deku-kun. Uraraka Ochako rushed into the kitchen, her face more flustered than usual. "Is that person the customer?" Ida Tenya shouted in urgency, not quite grasping the concept of finishing each other's sentences. Midoriya felt a bead of sweat form. "You mean Todoroki-kun?" He could already feel their unwarranted attention pressing him to reveal more. "He has a name?" Uraraka exclaimed, her expression one of shock. "Kun." Ida echoed, joining her surprise. The green-haired waiter fought the urge to facepalm at his friend's dramatic antics. "Yes, his name is Todoroki. And yes, I used to Kun. Like you, this is the first time I've seen that man, and I don't know how to answer your question. Also, why are you asking me? We're not even that close." "But you stalk him," they chorused. "I don't SSS stalk him." Midoriya formed an X with his arms, his face flushed with embarrassment. Where did you guys even get that idea? To say he was surprised to see Todoroki with another person, much less conversing calmly, was an understatement. When Midoriya witnessed that scene earlier, he almost dropped the water pitcher he was carrying. It was such a sight that it felt wrong. Could it be? Ida paused dramatically, all eyes on him. A sugar daddy? Midoriya's jaw nearly dropped, he could hardly believe such a word had come from straight-laced Ida. "I first thought of that as well, but..." Uraraka rubbed her chin thoughtfully. "When that gloomy guy was about to leave, Todoroki-kun paid for his takeout." "What?" Both of them turned to Midoriya, shocked to see he was also surprised by the revelation. "Maybe it's his father," he suggested, scratching the back of his head. "Nanny?" They exclaimed incredulously, as if they were characters from an anime. Midoriya couldn't believe he had suggested such a thing, the two men bore no resemblance to each other. "What's with you guys today?" he sputtered. "Why are you being so dramatic all of a sudden? This Todoroki-kun person is becoming even more mysterious than we thought." Ida commented, completely ignoring Midoriya's confusion. "And I was starting to ship Deku-kun and Todoroki-kun." Uraraka sighed, looking forlorn. "Ship?" Ida repeated, puzzled. "Why would you cargo them together?" "Ah, you innocent boy." She playfully hit him on the shoulder. "It's when you..." Midoriya didn't wait for his friend to finish. He rushed out of the kitchen, fearing his heart might explode from embarrassment if he stayed any longer. He glanced at the wall clock, just in time for the last orders. As he ran to the remaining customers, he spotted an unusual sight. Todoroki-kun was still at the cafe. It was odd since he usually left before 5 p.m. But today, he stayed until 7:30 p.m., half an hour before closing time. He seemed more focused than usual, almost determined. That person with him earlier must have greatly improved his mood. Midoriya shook off the thought. It wasn't like it mattered to him who Todoroki dined with at Café Perry, right? "Sir," he said softly, but the customer didn't respond. "Sir, would you like to place any additional orders before we close?" Todoroki stopped typing, giving him a dazed look as if processing what the waiter had just said. After a moment, he spoke. "Oh," he gasped innocently. Midoriya struggled to suppress a smile. "I'm sorry," Todoroki's voice was slower than usual, exhaustion evident. "I didn't notice the time." "I've noticed," Midoriya hummed before he could stop himself. When he realized what he had just said, his eyes widened in disbelief. Todoroki tilted his head to the side, curiosity in his gaze. Midoriya fought the urge to blush again. It's all right, sir. You're more than welcome to stay as long as you'd like. Todoroki's eyebrows furrowed as if he were analyzing something. His long lashes lowered, barely covering his striking eyes. Midoriya bit his lip, trying to maintain his composure. You called me, sir, again, Todoroki pointed out, sounding a bit disappointed. I apologize, Midoriya scratched the side of his face, forcing a laugh. It's becoming a habit of mine to call everyone formally when I'm here at work, he paused. Todoroki-kun. Todoroki's cheeks flushed slightly. Midoriya felt his own face warm in response. It's been a long time since someone called me with such familiarity, Todoroki said, sounding oddly pleased. Midoriya's thoughts were interrupted by an unexpected comment. What about your daddy? Todoroki's expression shifted, confusion and irritation crossing his features. Midoriya mentally cringed, wishing he could take back the words. Why did his thoughts always betray him at the worst times? Daddy? Todoroki repeated, his tone growing more irked. Midoriya was taken aback. He never expected Todoroki to display such a range of emotions. First surprise, then confusion, followed by annoyance, and finally back to confusion. Did you mean Aizawa-sensei? Midoriya processed the words for a moment. By Aizawa-sensei, I assume you meant the man you were with earlier? Todoroki nodded. Oh, he isn't your father? Midoriya's sweat dropped, realizing his mistake. Todoroki's expression twitched, and then, unexpectedly, he burst into laughter. It was a genuine, heartfelt laugh that reminded Midoriya of someone from years ago. It made his whole body tremble. Todoroki wiped tears from his eyes, stifling his laughter. God forbid Aizawa-sensei be my father, he paused, contemplating. Technically, he's more of a father figure to me than my real dad, so it does make sense you assumed that from seeing our interaction. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding, Todoroki-kun. Also, I would like to order an Oreo cheesecake, to go, please, Todoroki added at the last minute. Midoriya gaped at him. Excuse me. You asked me if I had any last orders before closing time, right? The waiter's mouth forms a small O. Also, are you planning to go somewhere else after Café Perry closes? Todoroki asks unexpectedly as Midoriya jots down his order on a small checkboard. He shakes his head. I don't think so. Why'd you ask? If it's not too much to ask. Todoroki hesitates, and Midoriya gestures encouragingly for him to continue. He nods earnestly. May we walk home together tonight? I have something important to tell you. What? Midoriya blinks, surprised. He hasn't even spoken yet. Todoroki looks confused as he glances at something or someone behind Midoriya. Turning around, he sees two curious onlookers peering through the kitchen door. They gasp when they realize they've been caught and slowly retreat back into the shadows. Uncharacteristically, a nerve pops on the green-haired waiter's temple. He looks at Todoroki with a tight smile. Excuse me for a second. Todoroki nods, a bead of sweat trailing down his face as Midoriya heads toward the kitchen with a determined expression. A horrified scream echoes from the other room, and the few remaining customers stare warily at the kitchen door, too afraid to move. The door swings open to reveal a man with broken glasses, trying to crawl away from the kitchen as if escaping a nightmare. Save me, the man pleads to Todoroki. But before Todoroki can react, the man's face pales as a mysterious hand grabs his legs. He screams in panic, desperately trying to escape but failing as darkness envelopes him, silencing his cries. Todoroki clasps his hands together in a silent prayer for the unfortunate man. May he rest in peace, he murmurs. The remaining customers join him in a quiet chant. After a few minutes, Midoriya exits the kitchen, looking refreshed. He returns to Todoroki's table, a radiant aura surrounding him, though a splash of red liquid decorates his face. What's that? Todoroki wonders if he made the right decision in asking. The normally kind Midoriya wipes his face with the sleeve of his uniform, his expression shifting as he notices the stain on his clothes. Oh. It's nothing. Midoriya flashes a smile that sends a chill down Todoroki's spine. Just my lost faith in humanity. Todoroki swallows hard. I like that, Midoriya says sweetly, perhaps a bit too sweetly. Todoroki blinks. What do you mean? You asked if we could go home together, right? Midoriya's expression pales slightly at his own words. I hope you don't mind waiting a few more minutes while I change into my normal clothes, my shift just ended. You're not going to close the shop with the other staff, he asks curiously. Midoriya grins. It has been taken care of. His voice drops lower than usual. That night, Todoroki Shouto begins to regret his life choices. Chapter 3. Luscious forest eyes stared back at Todoroki Shouto's dilated heterochromatic ones, and he felt his eyes water, not from fear, but from humiliation. I didn't expect you to be the type, came a voice that was usually sweet and innocent, now transformed into something dangerously stuck. A gasp escaped his lips, warmth flooding through him. I always thought you'd be an S. This wasn't the scenario Todoroki had in mind. He bit back a sound as the shorter yet stronger man raised his leg closer to him, igniting a reaction he couldn't control. His back arched, and he gripped the shoulder of the man pinning him against the wall. Instinct screamed for him to run, but he couldn't. Those eyes, burning with intensity, dared him to make a move. What do you think you're doing? Todoroki managed to say through gritted teeth, trying to sound authoritative but instead sounding vulnerable. It made Midoriya Izuku smirk, revealing a side of him that was unexpected. He leaned closer, lips near Todoroki's ear, whispering, "You." Todoroki felt he had messed up badly. About an hour earlier, Japan was experiencing an Indian summer, yet the air around them felt oddly cold. The sound of their shoes tapping against the Tokyo asphalt and the rumble of passing cars created a backdrop for their silent walk. Midoriya stole glances at Todoroki, wondering why he had asked him to walk home together. Todoroki sighed, his breath forming puffs in the humid air. A shadow crossed his face, and his eyes glinted with an emotion Midoriya couldn't quite place. Unbeknownst to him, Todoroki's hands shook in his pockets, overwhelmed by a cold, debilitating anxiety. Is there something wrong? Todoroki asked, tilting his head in curiosity, breaking the silence. Midoriya blushed, realizing he had been staring. He shook his head vigorously, trying to deny it, but Todoroki nodded and looked down, lost in thought. They both fell into their own worlds, gazing at the dark sky above. It would have been appealing if stars had been present to guide them home. The light pollution of Tokyo made Midoriya long for a simpler life, but he quickly remembered why he had left that behind. Midoriya, Todoroki called, his voice breaking the silence again. Yes. Midoriya replied, his nervousness evident as he spoke a bit too high. Yes, Todoroki-kun. I have something important to tell you. Midoriya abruptly stopped, causing Todoroki to bump into him. Normally, he would have found that adorable, but this was different, this was a pivotal moment. I hope after I tell you this, you won't treat me any differently, Todoroki continued. Midoriya's cheeks flushed as he struggled to form a coherent response. Wait, don't you think we're going too fast? Todoroki's expression shifted, disappointment evident as he pouted slightly. Going too fast. Midoriya felt a pang of regret. I mean, I just found out your name a few weeks ago, and you're already. Todoroki's breath hitched. You knew. Knew isn't quite right. If I said that, it would mean I was expecting things from you from the start. Midoriya stumbled over his words, realizing he was rambling. When were you planning to tell me this? Todoroki blushed. I never really planned to tell you. I was happy just watching you from a distance. Midoriya frowned, grabbing Todoroki's shoulder reassuringly. But Aizawa-sensei said if you ever got caught. Todoroki squeezed Midoriya's hand gently, a smile forming on his face. You might send me to prison. There was a pause. Excuse me. Juvie, to be exact, Todoroki corrected, mostly to himself. Juvie. As in juvenile detention center? Midoriya asked, surprised. Why would I send you there? How old are you? 18, Todoroki replied. 18. Midoriya exclaimed. You're underage. Todoroki frowned. I don't see how my age is relevant. Your age means everything. I could get in trouble if he paused. Wait, what were you planning to tell me? Todoroki looked at him blankly. I thought you knew. I think I might have misunderstood something. What did you think I was going to say? Please, Midoriya urged. Just tell me. They continued walking, the tension between them palpable as they moved forward together. Even though Japan is one of the safest places in the world, it's common sense that one should not stand in the middle of a dimly lit alley. Todoroki hesitates, introducing himself as Endeavor Shouto, the writer of the Midnight Detective series. Midoriya gasps, his excitement palpable as he exclaims that he is a big fan. You've mentioned, Todoroki replies with a sigh. He continues, explaining that Midoriya inspired the main character, Detective Green. Midoriya's eyes widen, and Todoroki takes it as his cue to elaborate. He admits that while Detective Green's appearance differs from Midoriya's, his attitude and demeanor are strikingly similar. However, he struggles to articulate his thoughts without sounding overly intense. Midoriya pauses, processing the information. Todoroki feels a bead of sweat trickle down his shirt, realizing they are in a dark street in Tokyo, an uncomfortable setting for their conversation. So, Midoriya begins, is it safe to assume that you frequent Café Perry to observe me for your character? Todoroki nods, and Midoriya looks taken aback. That was unexpected, he says, placing a hand on his hip, still trying to process the revelation. What did you expect me to say? Todoroki asks. Midoriya turns away, trying to appear nonchalant, but his earnest nature makes it hard for him to hide his feelings. It's nothing, he insists, but Todoroki isn't convinced. Really? He questions. You're too close, Midoriya defends himself. Todoroki steps back, pondering why Midoriya seems so unfazed. I don't mind it, even now. I mean, yes, thinking about it is a bit creepy, Midoriya clarifies. But it's not like you were watching me out of some weird obsession. You did it because you found inspiration in me. He pauses, as if struggling to believe his own words. Rather than feel creeped out, I actually feel flattered. I've always been labeled as plain, so the idea of being the basis for a popular fictional detective feels surreal. He chuckles, and Todoroki feels a pang in his heart. I feel like I'm the next Detective Conan or something. You're stretching it, Todoroki replies automatically. But it's true. Midoriya insists, laughter bubbling up again. Do you even read the reviews of your book? They're comparing you to Murakami Haruki. Are you embarrassed? Todoroki asks, but Midoriya doesn't respond. Ah. How cute. Cute. Todoroki repeats, incredulous. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you one of those guys who dislike using feminine words to describe themselves? Midoriya rolls his eyes, emphasizing his point. I'm not a misogynist, Todoroki defends. I just find it odd that someone is using adjectives to describe me that aren't related to temperature. What? Midoriya asks, confused. You know, Todoroki shrugs, fiery, scorching, or frosty, cool, chilly. Among others. So you're basically Katy Perry? Midoriya quips. There's a long pause before Todoroki responds, what? Midoriya leans against the wall, laughing uncontrollably. What's funny? Todoroki crosses his arms, annoyed. Midoriya continues to laugh, wiping tears from his eyes. I didn't think you had it in you to curse. I'm human, Midoriya, Todoroki replies, exasperated. What I don't understand is your connection to Katy Perry. Hot and cold. Doesn't it ring a bell? Midoriya asks, but Todoroki remains silent. It was released back and you should have been 10 years old then. I skipped a couple of grades, so if I pursued college, we'd probably be in the same year, Todoroki explains. So not only are you a writing prodigy, but also a genius, Midoriya teases, dodging Todoroki's playful jab. What else are you? I wouldn't be surprised if you claimed to have ice and fire powers. Why ice and fire? Oh wait, because I'm Katy Perry. Huh, you're hilarious, Midoriya. I should give you a jacket for that. Midoriya slumps down, clearly amused. Aside from worrying about the legal implications of your actions, Midoriya changes the topic, waving his hand dismissively. Why did you tell me about it? I mean, I didn't even notice you were watching me, and that means a lot since I'm also. Midoriya bites his tongue, but Todoroki catches on. You're also what? He presses. It's nothing. Midoriya waves his hands, looking flustered. You're also watching me? Midoriya gasps, backing away and pointing an accusing finger at Todoroki. How could you say such embarrassing things with a straight face? Todoroki tilts his head, confused. I don't think it's embarrassing. After all, I've been watching you all this. Stop, please. Midoriya interrupts, covering his cheeks. This is too much STMLTN for me in one night. But didn't you say you didn't mind? Todoroki asks, a teasing smile on his lips. I meant that I'm okay with you using me as your character basis. Midoriya stomps his feet, resembling a child throwing a tantrum, which Todoroki finds adorable. I still find it embarrassing that you're watching me and proudly declaring that you're doing it. Midoriya exclaimed, his face flushed. I'm not declaring any, Todoroki began. Yes, you are. Midoriya's cheeks were so red it seemed he might cry soon. Todoroki almost felt bad for teasing him. Almost. So why were you watching me? He asked. Midoriya buried his face in his palms and groaned. You really don't know when to quit, do you? Todoroki blinked. I regret calling you cute. Is it connected to what you assumed I was going to say? Midoriya shot back. You're horrible. Is it a yes? Todoroki pressed. Yes, Midoriya admitted, giving up. Hey, stop changing the topic. You didn't answer my question. Fair enough, Todoroki replied. You asked why I told you about my identity. Well, I wanted you to read my drafts and hear your opinion about them. Midoriya's forest green eyes sparkled, and he inhaled sharply. Oh my god, you mean I'll be able to read Raw Endeavor Sensei's writings? Please don't make it sound like it's such a big deal. But it is a big deal. I feel like I'm one step ahead of my competitors or something. Todoroki paused. I'll act as if I didn't hear that. Anyway, are you willing to lend me a hand? I think I already gave you a part of my soul by being the whole basis of your character, Midoriya chuckled. So just asking for my opinion is probably just a small fraction. Todoroki felt a strange emotion coursing through him, something he found hard to describe. His upbringing had been privileged, and he knew he was somewhat spoiled, though he would never admit it. Perhaps this was what you call relief and true gratitude. Thank you, he said, bowing deeply. Midoriya panicked. Don't do that, please. Todoroki raised his head. Why not? You don't need to be so formal, Todoroki-kun. We're friends, just act like you normally would. We're friends, he repeated, surprised. Midoriya gave him a blank look. We aren't. I thought I'd be presumptuous if I considered you as such, Todoroki said quietly. God, you're only 18. Don't go using words like presumptuous. Midoriya paused, contemplating. Oh wait, you're a child prodigy. Your first word was probably something complicated. I'm sorry to disappoint, he replied sharply, but my first word was mama. Midoriya's sweat dropped. Ah, I apologize, Todoroki-kun. Even if we're friends now, I should watch my choice of words. I might have stepped over the line, I'm sorry. Todoroki looked taken aback by Midoriya's sudden apology. Just when he thought he could finally have a decent conversation without awkwardness, his insecurities resurfaced. I should be the one apologizing. Midoriya's bright green eyes widened. I'm not familiar with casual conversations and might overreact to small things. I hope you'll help me overcome my social shortcomings. Midoriya's grin was so bright it almost made Todoroki smile too. In fact, he did smile. So, are you going to let me read this draft of yours or not? He joked, extending his hand. That's not my plan, actually, Todoroki said. Rather than making you read it, we'll reenact the scenario, and I'll see your reaction. That was unexpected, Midoriya contemplated. So we'll be role-playing? I guess so, Todoroki shrugged. But just act like your normal self since the character you'll be playing is more or less yourself. Midoriya wrinkled his nose. Alright, which part is it? Wait, before that, Todoroki said, do you know about shipping? Midoriya pursed his lips, recalling what his friend Uraraka had said earlier. Yes, I do. What about it? Well, Aizawa-sensei, my editor, suggested that I should. How should I say this? Insert romantic undertones between Detective Green and the Fool's initial meeting. The Fool was the antagonist of the Midnight Detective series, a character shrouded in mystery. Midoriya thought the idea of a romantic relationship between the two seemed unusual. Judging from the look on your face, I can see we share the same sentiments, Todoroki said, closing his eyes to hide his amusement. But we live in Japan, where literature often relies on implication, and being direct is almost a taboo. And you know what feeds off of implications? Shippers. Midoriya exclaimed, catching on. Especially the Fujoshi and Fudanshi. Todoroki nodded. Even if they aren't necessarily the target market, by satisfying their wants, we can trigger a good amount of sales. I didn't know you were so business savvy. Also, don't you think that's a bit manipulative, Todoroki-kun? I was supposed to be an heir to a conglomerate here in Japan, of course, I learned a few tricks along the way. Before Midoriya could ask what he meant by that, he was suddenly pushed against the wall. What the? Midoriya exclaimed, but before he could finish, a rush of wind exploded next to his face. A hand slammed on the wall beside him, and he felt a sharp object press against his neck. Do you seriously have a knife, Todoroki-kun? Todoroki didn't reply. Instead, his heterochromatic eyes glared at him intensely, making the knife unnecessary. Their faces were just inches apart, and Midoriya could feel the coldness of Todoroki's breath against the warm summer air. It seemed they were already playing the reenactment game. Midoriya sighed deeply, ready to engage in whatever challenge lay ahead. Fool-san, Midoriya murmured, surprised by how the situation had unfolded. The knife pressed against his skin, and he felt a trickle of something warm. How did you expect this to go? Todoroki smirked. The other way around, Midoriya replied, his voice steady despite the tension. Ah, I bet that's what you thought during the previous cases. Monica, Kurosaki, Thomas. Don't you dare say their names. Green snarled, his knuckles turning white. I will never allow you to. Why must you react so strongly against me? Shouldn't you be reflecting on this yourself? The Fool's voice was smooth, almost serpentine. After all, it is your actions that led to their early demise. Green felt his words vanish as he stared into the Fool's eyes, seeing his own horror reflected back. He understood that death was imminent, and all his efforts to catch this murderer had been in vain. Tonight, he would simply become another victim. The Fool's laughter filled the empty streets, a chilling sound that echoed back from the neighborhood. It was a laugh that sent shivers down Green's spine. You are good at your job, Detective Green, but your emotions cloud your judgment, the fool whispered, causing Green to shiver involuntarily. It will lead to your downfall. In a moment that felt too cliché, the fool was supposed to vanish into the night, leaving Green to curse his fate. But Midoriya had other plans in mind. Payback time, he hummed to himself. Suddenly, Todoroki found his weapon thrown aside. He stepped back, caught off guard as Midoriya grabbed his shoulder, switching their positions. Midoriya pinned him against the wall, leaving no escape. Todoroki realized that Midoriya's strength was more than just for show. Luscious green eyes met his, and he felt a rush of emotions, humiliation mixed with something deeper. I didn't expect you to be the type. Midoriya's voice had shifted, becoming something dangerous and alluring. A gasp escaped Todoroki's lips as he felt Midoriya's presence close, a warmth spreading through him. I always thought you'd be the diamante one. Todoroki struggled, but it was futile. Midoriya's grip was firm, and he felt a mix of fear and excitement. What do you think you're doing? Todoroki managed to say through gritted teeth, breaking character. Midoriya smirked, leaning closer. You. Todoroki made an odd sound, a mix of surprise and something else. Midoriya burst into laughter, taking the opportunity to push Todoroki away, causing him to stumble. Did I scare you? Midoriya asked between laughs. I'm sorry, I might have gone too far. It's hard to accept your apology when you look like you just had the time of your life, Todoroki replied dryly. Midoriya straightened, adopting a serious expression. I'm sorry, I might have gone too far, he repeated, sincerity in his tone. Todoroki sighed, accepting the moment. What was that? You almost gave me a heart attack. I could tell, Midoriya said, stifling laughter. You told me to act like myself, so I did. I defended myself. Todoroki frowned, retrieving the knife that had been knocked away. What was that move? I didn't even see you do it. Midoriya grinned. It's a military secret. What? My stepdad used to work in the army, Midoriya explained. He taught me some self-defense tricks. Todoroki nodded, contemplating this new information. Shouldn't Detective Green be aware of such skills? After all, they could save his life. So Detective Green tends to pin people against walls when attacked, Todoroki muttered to himself. How interesting. Midoriya blushed. I told you it was for self-defense. Todoroki chuckled, waving his hand dismissively. I don't mean to tease. It could make the detective more realistic, don't you think? Midoriya nodded, though he sensed Todoroki's thoughts were more playful than serious. He handed the knife back to Todoroki, staring at it for a moment. This is a bread knife, he said dryly, recognizing the logo from Café Perry. He instinctively checked his neck for any injuries, relieved to find none. After all, it was just a bread knife. It was just his imagination, fueled by the intense situation, that made him feel something unusual. Please return it for me, Todoroki said, bowing meekly. He looked so earnest that Midoriya couldn't bring himself to reprimand him for taking the cafe's kitchenware. Noting to himself that Todoroki had a habit of borrowing kitchen items, he decided to inspect his plate for any missing utensils in the future. He suddenly remembered the shipping request Todoroki had made. It's also overflowing with implications, don't you think? Midoriya said with a playful wiggle of his eyebrows, causing Todoroki to look away, clearly uncomfortable. Hey, don't give me that look. You're the one who asked for it. Unbeknownst to Midoriya, Todoroki's heart raced. His face was still flushed from their earlier conversation, and he was grateful for the dimly lit streets that hid his embarrassment. My apartment is this way, Midoriya announced as they reached an intersection. I assume you're going the opposite direction. Todoroki nodded, and they bid farewell, expressing gratitude for each other's company. As Todoroki watched Midoriya walk away, he felt a dull ache in his chest, something he had never experienced before. Slowly, he turned around and retraced their steps together. He didn't have the courage to tell Midoriya that his apartment was right next to Café Perry. He simply enjoyed the walk. Once home, Todoroki went straight to his laptop to document the day's events. He didn't need to try hard to recall the details that had left an impression on him. As he inhaled deeply, trying to etch the memory in his mind, he continued his work. Meanwhile, Midoriya arrived at his own residence, feeling overwhelmed. He stumbled onto his doorstep and found himself lying on the floor, feeling the weight of his jeans. He sighed, feeling a mix of emotions he couldn't quite understand. In the quiet of his room, he reflected on the earlier encounter, his mind wandering. As dawn approached, he finally stopped, realizing the gravity of his thoughts and actions. "Oh no," he whispered, crawling toward the bathroom to wash his hands. He looked in the mirror, catching a glimpse of himself and feeling a wave of confusion wash over him. "I'm sorry," he cried, tears streaming down his face as he confronted the turmoil within him. The next morning, a high-pitched electronic ringing woke Todoroki from his sleep. He blinked at his alarm clock, sunlight streaming through the window. It was Sunday. He had been busy as Endeavor Shouto, his mystery detective writer persona. The past 2 months had been consumed with editing his final draft and promoting his book, which had become a hit. Critics praised the latest volume of The Midnight Detective, noting the chemistry between the characters and the emotional depth it evoked. Much of Todoroki's success was thanks to Midoriya, who had helped him bring humanity to his characters and improve his interpersonal skills. Through Midoriya, he had met new friends and expanded his social circle, which had dramatically changed his life. He never realized how emotionally taxing it could be to spend time with someone else, especially after confessing that Midoriya was his inspiration for Detective Green. Listening to Midoriya talk about various topics felt like attending a college lecture for Todoroki. Each interesting detail was noted down in his mind. He learned that Midoriya had an extensive background in martial arts, influenced by his stepfather's military career and his own experiences with bullying. Midoriya was also an only child, and while some of this information was deemed unnecessary for his story, Todoroki found it fascinating. However, the more Todoroki explored Midoriya's life, the more he sensed an invisible barrier forming between them. It was perplexing. Despite feeling closer, he sensed Midoriya was creating distance. It was as if an unspoken line had been drawn, indicating the limits of their connection. Todoroki, feeling somewhat disappointed in himself as a writer, swung his legs off the bed and headed to his closet. He picked out the new clothes that Midoriya, along with Ida and Uraraka, had helped him choose. While Uraraka had taken the lead in selecting the outfits, Todoroki was excited to show them to his mother. These clothes represented his growing friendship and personal growth. He hoped his mother would be proud of him for stepping beyond his self-imposed limitations. Unfortunately, due to his busy schedule, his weekly visits to his mother at the hospital had to be postponed. She understood the demands of his writing career, but Todoroki still felt the weight of not being able to see her. He made sure to call her when he could, especially during his book promotion tours, and he knew Aizawa-sensei visited her regularly on his behalf. Yet, nothing could replace the comfort of seeing her in person. After freshening up, Todoroki prepared himself for the day ahead, knowing it was a significant one for him. Todoroki arrived at the hospital via taxi, grateful for Japan's efficient taxi system. Despite his father's shortcomings, Enji Todoroki had ensured that his mother received care at one of Japan's largest medical facilities, known for its well-trained staff. His mother's ward, the inpatient psychiatric ward, was located at the far left of the hospital, next to the children's ward and a garden where terminally ill children could play, blissfully unaware of their circumstances. More stable patients from the psychiatric ward often visited the garden to relax or enjoy the fresh air. As a regular visitor, Todoroki faced little hassle entering the hospital. The protocols were second nature to him, having been ingrained in his mind since childhood. He made his way to his mother's private room without any issues. Upon sliding the door open, he was greeted by the sight of a woman with shimmering platinum hair and stormy gray eyes, the features he had inherited. His mother, Todoroki Miyuki, sat on her hospital bed with a dazed expression. Despite her age, she radiated beauty, and Shouto felt a surge of affection for her. Her skin was as white as snow, and she looked remarkably youthful for her 40s. Her gray eyes softened as they met his, and he couldn't help but smile back. "Enji," she called out, her voice filled with confusion. Instantly, Shouto covered the part of his face that resembled his father's and turned away, emphasizing his other half. The look on Miyuki's face shifted from puzzlement to recognition. "Shouto," she finally said. He approached her bed, removing his hand. "Yes, mother, it's me. I missed you, my son," she said, opening her arms for a hug. He obliged, feeling the warmth of her embrace. You've grown so much." "Mother, I've only been away for 2 months." "Yes, I know," she chuckled. "I don't mean physically. I can sense a change in you. Also," she gestured to his new polo shirt, "that's a wonderfully expensive-looking polo. Is that a reward for the success of your new book?" Shouto mentioned that its sales broke records in Japan. Shouto smiled at her keen observation, impressed that she had noticed so much in such a short time. She gestured for him to sit in the chair in front of her bed, and he took a seat with a respectful bow. This was his cue to share about his life over the past 2 months, and he dove right in. "So you told this boy, Midoriya-kun, that he's the basis for Detective Green?" Miyuki asked, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "Since you've gotten closer to him, it seems your social life has blossomed." "He's more of a man, mother," he replied, clearing his throat awkwardly. "But yes, that sums it up." "Is he handsome?" Shouto's eyes widened. I don't really know how to answer that. But yes, I suppose. I've noticed a lot of customers at Café Perry looking at him, so I think he's appealing." "Such an innocent young man you are, Shouto," Miyuki giggled, reminding him of Uraraka's playful teasing. "I didn't expect you to have feelings that way." "Feelings," he repeated, glancing down at himself to ensure he wasn't making any unintended movements. "But whatever makes you happy, my boy. Modern technology offers many options if you ever need assistance." Shouto's face flushed at her words. "Mother." She laughed, her voice like soft chimes in the summer breeze. Her gentle demeanor calmed him, and he cherished the moment, wishing it could last forever. However, reality soon crept in. Miyuki reached out to cup his face, and he tensed slightly. She gently stroked the smooth scar surrounding his left eye. "Shouto, what happened here?" The light in Shouto's eyes dimmed as he smiled at her, resting his face against her palm like a cat seeking affection. She blinked in surprise but allowed him to stay close. Suddenly, he stood up. "Look at the time. It's time for your walk in the garden for some fresh air." He moved to retrieve her cane, noticing her bewildered expression. "Enji?" Miyuki asked, clearly disturbed. "What happened to your face? Should I call the doctors?" He felt the weight of her concern, knowing he needed to reassure her. Miyuki discovered her engagement to a man named Todoroki Enji at the age of naturally, she was upset, she had never heard of him before that day. She suspected it was her parents' way of punishing her for wanting to pursue her dreams as a writer instead of taking over their multi-billion-dollar company. They had always known she struggled with the mathematical skills expected of her, and she felt guilty that their hard work might go to waste because of her chosen path. But what about her own feelings? Why couldn't they accept that she was her own person? The couple officially met when she turned 20, having had no contact for the previous 2 years. Miyuki had imagined what her future husband would look like, preparing herself for the worst. She pictured him as an older man, perhaps frail and unkempt, and imagined all the villains from her stories taking on various forms of this Enji. "You really dislike your fiancé, don't you?" Aizawa asked, reading her manuscript with a bored expression. "Hate is a strong word," she replied, pouting. "It's more like I have some preconceived notions about him." Aizawa, her friend from high school and a trainee editor, had always been supportive. They often discussed her feelings about her engagement while leaning against the school rooftop railings, watching the clouds drift by. "Why can't it be me?" he once asked her, a hint of longing in his voice. "Can you run a billion-dollar company?" she challenged, knowing the weight of such responsibility. "I get it," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "Sorry for asking." Miyuki understood the purpose of her union and acknowledged that she needed Enji to help maintain the family's legacy. "If I want to continue my writing career and ensure our company is in capable hands, then I'll accept my role," she explained, sadness evident in her stormy gray eyes. "Will this make you happy?" Aizawa asked, leaning closer. "No one is truly happy," she replied, tucking a stray strand of hair behind his ear. When they finally met, Enji was 5 years older than her and far more handsome than she had anticipated. He had a rugged charm and an intense gaze that caught her off guard. Despite her initial judgments, she felt an unexpected attraction to him. Miyuki was used to her life going according to plan, but Enji defied all her expectations. He lacked a sob story to justify his actions and seemed to act purely on impulse. To her dismay, he was not the romantic hero she had hoped for. They married a year later. On their wedding night, Enji was surprisingly gentle, treating her with care. Though it was a new experience, it felt good, and for a moment, Miyuki felt like the heroine of a romance novel. However, unbeknownst to her, this was just the beginning of a more complicated journey. After their marriage, Miyuki found herself working from home, often battling writer's block. Enji appreciated having a supportive wife at home, but as she adapted to her new life, her creativity flourished, keeping her busy with new ideas. One day, Enji returned home, and everything began to change. He expected her to be waiting at the doorsteps, greeting him with a cheerful "darling," before they shared a passionate moment. But how could he fulfill that fantasy if the object of his affection was nowhere to be found? He discovered her in the study, intensely typing at the typewriter with a determined look on her face. Enji was a jealous man, anything that took Miyuki's attention away from him was met with his wrath. He charged into the room, and Miyuki turned around to greet her husband with a fond smile, which quickly transformed into shock as Enji grabbed her typewriter, a gift from a fan when she first started writing, and smashed it to the ground. The sound echoed throughout the house, but for Miyuki, the sound of the keys falling off was the loudest. She prepared to confront him, but the terrifying look in his turquoise eyes silenced her. Enji grabbed her silky white hair and pulled her toward their bedroom. She struggled, pleading for him to let go, feeling the pain as he held her tightly. But her cries went unheard. He threw her onto the bed, and the night unfolded in a way that left her feeling lost. When morning came, Miyuki's voice was hoarse from her cries. Her pale skin bore the marks of the previous night. She tried to sit up, but her body ached all over. Her stormy eyes, usually bright, were puffy from tears. She turned to see Enji wrapped around her, looking innocent as if he were incapable of causing her harm. But she knew the truth, and her body bore witness to it. As his hazy teal eyes met hers, she saw an expression that seemed to convey regret. "I'm sorry," he whispered, kissing her gently on the lips. Miyuki began to cry as he held her tightly. That morning, they shared a moment of intimacy, but it was not the first time this had happened. It became a pattern for Enji to create chaos over trivial matters, only to win her back with tears and promises to change. Miyuki believed him, hoping that love could transform him into a kinder man. "Darling," she said softly at the dinner table, her long silver hair tied up, revealing the marks on her neck. "I'm going to the publishing office tomorrow." His eyes flared with anger, and his fists slammed against the table, causing the dishes to rattle. "You're just making excuses to meet that Aizawa, aren't you?" Their baby, Fuyumi, began to cry in her chair. Miyuki tried to maintain her composure as she attended to her daughter. "Enji, you know that's not true," she said, using his real name only during arguments. "Don't mess with me," he shouted, startling Fuyumi into wailing. Miyuki kissed her forehead, trying to soothe her. "Please, not in front of Fuyumi." I'll take her to the nursery, and we can talk later. Servants. Enji roared, and the house staff quickly appeared to take Fuyumi away. Miyuki felt frustrated, she preferred to care for her children herself. Once they were alone, she hoped they could discuss their issues calmly. But before she knew it, she found herself pushed against the table, and the conversation took a turn she had not anticipated. Afterward, she learned to keep her writing ambitions to herself. When Enji left for work, she kissed him goodbye and soon headed out herself. Miyuki, Aizawa said, frowning as he sipped his coffee. You look unwell. Are you eating enough? All my baby fat has just melted away now that we're adults, she replied, adjusting her scarf. At 23, and 3 years married to Enji, she felt as if she had just begun to break free from her confines. Can you tell the publishing company I'm planning to change my pen name? He choked on his coffee, and she handed him a paper towel. That's sudden. Are you sure? Didn't you work hard for Endeavor Miyuki to become a household name since you were 15? Endeavor Miyuki was already a household name when I was 15, she reminded him. Aizawa opened his mouth to respond but then closed it. Cheeky, he muttered under his breath. I know I am, she laughed, though her laughter lacked its usual brightness. Goldfish, he asked, confused by her playful jab. Miyuki smiled, but the moment was interrupted as Aizawa flipped the papers on the table, sending them flying. It was challenging to convince the heads of the company to allow her to change her pen name, especially since Endeavor Miyuki was at the peak of her fame. I was a young entrepreneur, struggling to keep my family's business afloat after my father's passing. With little knowledge of how the world worked, I felt lost and desperate. The only way I could think to save our business was to compromise my values, and I did what I thought was necessary. As I sat there, a mix of emotions washed over me. I felt a gentle touch along my spine, and he leaned down, kissing me softly. It was a display of affection that I knew was insincere, yet I found myself drawn to it once again. My hands felt clammy, and I wished for time to freeze as I faced an uncertain future. To distract myself, I picked up a book that I had dismissed as unoriginal. Yet, as I read, I found myself captivated by the story. I never expected to fall in love with the protagonist's journey. Did what? He asked, breaking my reverie. It was hard to focus on our conversation amidst the chaos of my thoughts, but I knew I had to keep talking to avoid the inevitable. I fell in love with someone's mind, I admitted. His expression shifted, and I found myself looking into his eyes. He had a serene look that reminded me of our wedding day, a time that felt so distant now. I remembered how things had changed after that day. While I was caught in my thoughts, I recalled a scene from the book where the protagonist tried to redeem an enemy. It seemed foolish to think that a simple gesture could change someone so deeply entrenched in their motives. It was so pure and naive, he said, his admiration evident. I wanted to take that purity and make it my own. He shared how he had invested in my future, supporting my writing career, and how proud he was to see my name dedicated in my second book. You were my fan, I said, trying to process his words. I thought you accepted my proposal because you knew me, he replied, a hint of sadness in his voice. You broke it, I whispered, and he kissed me deeply in response. My wife, I can buy you another one. I just want you to move forward, he said, but I remained silent. He continued, sharing how he had loved my mind from the beginning, even before he knew who I was. He had waited patiently for me to come of age, eager to build a life together. Why are you telling me this? I asked, feeling the weight of his words. I want you to know that I've loved you since the start, he confessed. But as he spoke, I felt trapped in a situation I couldn't escape. I longed for freedom, for a life beyond the confines of our relationship. I had hoped that with the arrival of our children, things might change, but instead, I felt more isolated. As time passed, he became distant, rarely touching me unless he was inebriated. I should have felt relieved, but instead, I found myself yearning for the connection we once had. I was caught in a cycle of longing and despair, trapped in a world where I felt unloved and unworthy. Miyuki felt trapped, unable to escape the oppressive atmosphere surrounding her. Enji's actions made her question her very existence, leaving her feeling devoid of purpose. The bruises on her body kept her confined to her home, and she communicated with Aizawa through letters, aided by her loyal servants who shared her passion for writing. Initially, she had viewed these women as adversaries, unaware that they too had endured similar hardships at the hands of the same man. It became clear to her that women needed to support one another, especially in difficult times. One day, a voice called from outside the shoji door, prompting her to pause her typing on the typewriter Enji had gifted her. "Miyuki-sama," the servant announced, bowing deeply. "There is a man outside the gates causing a scene, claiming to be your friend." Miyuki's heart sank at the mention of a friend. Since her isolation began, she had lost touch with everyone. Enji was all she had left. "Did you ask for his name?" she inquired. "He says his name is Eraserhead, like the writer." Aizawa, also known as Shouto, had taken it upon himself to carry on her legacy after both she and Sawashiro Shouto had disappeared from public life. As her editor for nearly 2 decades, his writing style had become reminiscent of hers, particularly the innocent tone that had once captivated Enji. "Tell him I'll meet him at the gates." "I can't let him into the manor, what would my husband say?" she replied. "It's not that, Miyuki-sama," the servant began, but she dismissed her concerns. It wasn't until she stood face to face with Aizawa that she realized the warning in her servant's tone. "What happened to you?" Aizawa exclaimed, his voice filled with concern as he took in her frail appearance. "These bruises. Did he do this to you?" Miyuki forced a smile, lying, "I fell down the stairs." "Falling down the stairs doesn't cause a black eye." "Why are you covering for him?" he said, frustration evident in his voice. "Ever since you married, you've barely left the house. You even started sending your drafts by mail, and you know you prefer my feedback in person." "It's not what you think," she began. "Miyuki, you're hurt. No matter how good you are at hiding it, these marks show the truth of what you've endured." Aizawa clenched his fists, anger radiating from him. "Why didn't you tell me? I'm your best friend. I told you I'm fine." "You're not. For goodness sake, Miyuki." Aizawa shook her shoulders gently, desperate to break through her denial. "Are you worried about what he'll do to the children?" "I'll take care of them, I'll treat them as my own." "Are you suggesting I divorce my husband?" she snapped, pushing his hands away, her eyes flashing with anger. Aizawa fell silent, hurt by her words. "I just wanted to help you." "That's not how it seems to me, you're meddling in my life." "Miyuki," he pleaded. "I assumed you came for business. If I'm wrong, you can leave." Without waiting for his response, she turned and walked away. Aizawa reached out to her, but he knew it was futile. You cannot save someone who doesn't see themselves as in danger. You've lost your way, Miyuki. And in truth, she had. Once, she had thought she would be the one to initiate a divorce, but now it felt like a distant thought. One day, Enji had called her to the dining room to discuss something important. When he revealed a set of papers from his expensive briefcase, she felt her anger boil over. "I knew it," she said, her body trembling with rage. "You've been wearing sweet perfume lately. Have you found someone else? Is it the secretary? Or a colleague? Are you accepting bribes from businessmen's daughters?" Enji remained silent. "You're disgusting," she shouted. "You won't even deny it?" "Miyuki, you're a writer," he replied, his tone flat. "You can create countless scenarios in your mind. Once you decide something is true, no explanation will change your mind. So it's my fault now." The shoji door opened slightly, revealing their son, Shouto, who peered in with concern. "Father, mother, please don't fight anymore." Miyuki's anger dissipated as she crouched down to her son's level, wiping the tears from his cheeks. "We're not fighting, Shouto. Go back to your room, I'll be there soon. But why is father crying? Shouto asked, pointing at Enji. It took a moment for Miyuki to process her child's words. Turning to Enji, she saw an expression she had never witnessed before. His turquoise eyes were watery, and he was struggling to hold back tears. Be right back, Shouto, she said, ushering him out of the room. Once he was gone, she turned back to Enji, who was now openly crying. Her heart broke at the sight. No, darling, don't cry. Hesitantly, she reached out to him. It was strange to see this strong man so vulnerable. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to shout. Instead of replying, Enji pulled her into a tight embrace, burying his face in her neck. Within moments, her blouse was damp with his tears. She inhaled his familiar scent, feeling a mix of comfort and sorrow. I ruined you, he sobbed. I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I did this. Please forgive me, she whispered. There's nothing to forgive, Miyuki said softly, her fingers tracing the contours of his back. I love you, Enji. I love you. His strong arms tightened around her waist, but deep down, Enji knew this wasn't love. Miyuki had lost her grip on reality, mistaking her feelings for something they were not. I'm sorry, Miyuki, he repeated, but she hushed him, insisting it was all right. She loved him, and that was enough. This was one of the two sides of Miyuki. In this moment, she was calm and gentle, reminiscent of her former self, but there was only a hint of that person left. She embodied the ideal of a loving partner, the one Enji had hoped for years ago. Yet, there was another side to her, one that Enji had never anticipated. He recalled a time when he returned home to find her in a fit of rage, smashing plates on the floor. When he tried to intervene, she had brandished a shard at him, her voice low and threatening. I'll make you pay, she had said, her words chilling him to the bone. It was a stark contrast to the warmth she showed him just moments before. What frightened him most was her ability to forget her outbursts the next day. She would act as if they were newlyweds again, showering him with affection, only to turn on him with harsh words and threats later on. Enji had considered leaving her, but he couldn't abandon the family they had built together. Instead, he resolved to help her, determined to restore the woman he once knew. He began making arrangements to consult a top psychiatrist, hoping to prevent any harm from coming to their children. But just after their conversation, an alarming incident occurred. Miyuki had thrown a kettle of boiling water at their youngest son, Shouto. Mother, are you all right? You've been silent for a while now. Miyuki blinked, finding herself staring at the face she had once marred. Mother? Shouto frowned, his eyebrows furrowing together. The sudden gust of wind took her by surprise, sending a few leaves flying. It was unusually cool for a summer day in Tokyo, and she felt her hair standing on end as she gripped something cold and metallic. She realized she was sitting in a wheelchair. The cicadas hummed around them, creating a natural symphony, while distant children's laughter echoed from the playground nearby. They were in the hospital garden, just as Shouto had promised. But all she could focus on was the smooth pinkish-red scar surrounding his left eye. Horror filled her stormy gaze as she recalled the day she had caused it. Oh no, I'm sorry, Shouto. I'm so sorry, Miyuki traced the scar with trembling fingers, her voice filled with desperation. I didn't mean to do this to you. She began to babble, words tumbling out that he couldn't quite understand. It was as if she were a child learning to speak, and he struggled to mask his fear. Instead, he gently patted her shoulder. Oka-san, I forgive you. It's all in the past now. However, this only seemed to agitate her further. She stood up from her wheelchair, nearly toppling over. He rushed to her side to help, but she pushed him away with surprising strength. Wide-eyed, Shouto found himself sitting on the grass, watching helplessly as his mother thrashed and cried out in distress. He refused to accept that she was truly lost to him. Suddenly, her body tensed, and she began to wheeze, struggling to breathe. Mother. Shouto felt a flashback wash over him. This was unlike anything he had seen before. He had no idea what was happening, only that it frightened him deeply. In the past, he had often wondered how his father could keep his mother confined for so long. As he grew older, he remembered her episodes, talking to herself, then suddenly shouting, "Shut up! Shut up," even when she was alone. Some days she was so vibrant and full of life that he believed she could conquer the world. Other days, she would cry inconsolably for hours, often without a clear reason. Shouto hated his father for the pain his mother endured, but he also recognized her flaws. "Mother, please." Tears blurred his vision. He hated feeling powerless. "She's hyperventilating, panicking won't help." Shouto turned at the sound of a familiar voice and saw Midoriya Izuku approaching. "Miss, please breathe using this." Midoriya pulled out a brown paper bag, positioning it in front of her face. At first, her breathing was erratic, but gradually it steadied, signaling that she was calming down. Her eyes returned to normal, and her body relaxed. "Sorry if it smells like a tuna sandwich," he added sheepishly, scratching the back of his head. The commotion had drawn the attention of the nurses, who quickly arrived to assess the situation. After asking Shouto several questions about what had triggered Miyuki's episode, she was taken by her doctor for an impromptu session. Shouto learned that she hadn't had an episode in a while and was advised to be cautious during his next visit, which he understood meant it might not be wise for him to see her anytime soon. Midoriya waited for him to finish speaking with the doctor. "Sorry for making you wait," Shouto said, "and thank you for what you did earlier." The green-haired boy shook his head, offering a shy smile. "I'm just glad my college knowledge was helpful." "What do you mean?" Shouto raised an eyebrow. Midoriya turned away, visibly flustered. "Shall we get going?" Although he knew Midoriya was trying to change the subject, Shouto nodded, and they began to walk together. "I took a medical course back in college," Midoriya said unexpectedly. "My stepfather had an incurable disease and passed away just as I was about to graduate high school. I vowed to become a doctor to find a cure and help others, to make up for not being able to save him." "I know it sounds cliché." Midoriya laughed softly, but Shouto responded earnestly. "I find it admirable. Having a clear goal is impressive, especially at your age. Many people struggle to find direction in life. Don't dismiss your dreams as cliché, you're an amazing person." "Why do you talk like an old man?" Midoriya pouted, trying to hide the blush on his cheeks. "Aren't you 4 years younger than me?" "I believe age doesn't define one's wisdom," Shouto replied. "You're wasting kind words on me," Midoriya said, his eyes clouded under the dim streetlights. "Yes, I had a dream. But a dream is just a dream unless you have the means to pursue it. I had big dreams, Todoroki-kun, but I didn't realize that achieving them required significant effort. Maybe my steps weren't enough. I ended up stopping for a year when I was already so close to graduating and finally reaching med school." Midoriya gasped, realizing his outburst. He lowered his head, hiding his face beneath the bushiness of his hair. "Sorry, I didn't really mean to," he trailed off, unsure of what to say next. The two continued walking in silence. "You're still amazing, Midoriya," Todoroki said, glancing at his companion. Midoriya looked at him with an unreadable expression, but Todoroki met his gaze with a smile. "There's nothing wrong with admitting that you need rest." Midoriya was the first to break their gaze. His forest green eyes began to water, but he quickly rubbed them with the back of his hand. "Thanks," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Todoroki heard him but said nothing. Their journey continued in silence until they reached an intersection. "Before we part ways, may I ask you something?" Todoroki finally spoke. Midoriya jumped, having been lost in thought. "Yes," he replied, his voice trembling. "It has been bothering me for quite some time now." "What were you doing in the psychiatric ward's garden?" "Oh, right. You probably thought I appeared out of nowhere. Every Sunday, I volunteer at the children's ward to read or play games with terminally ill children. The children's and psychiatric wards are right next to each other, and I was just passing by when I saw you and your mother," he explained, scratching the back of his ears. "You really are an amazing person. You even do charity work in your spare time." "I'm just trying to be a decent human being," Midoriya replied modestly. "May I come with you?" Todoroki asked suddenly. "What?" "I want to try being a decent human being, too," he declared. Midoriya chuckled. "You can be a decent human being in other ways, Todoroki-kun." "I want to follow your way," Todoroki beamed. "The Midoriya way." "Midoriyado." He even suggested a silly name for it. Midoriya burst out laughing, and Todoroki felt a sense of satisfaction at seeing the scowl on Midoriya's face disappear. It was odd, Todoroki thought he knew everything about Midoriya by now, but he realized he had only scratched the surface. He would soon discover more about Midoriya as their friendship deepened. For now, he remained unaware of Midoriya's habit of scratching the back of his ears whenever he was hiding something.